So Vitaly, I'm just hand it off to you and let you take the floor. You got about 20, 25 minutes. If you want to do a lot of this as Q&A, it's all up to your prerogative.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Vitalii Boiko. I'm the one who created the display technology, which is backbone of the virtual production in the modern days. A couple of months ago, Erik invited me to talk to the group, and I couldn't make it that time. And over this couple of months, I was thinking, all right, what I'm going to talk about? I mean, all those people definitely have much more experience in cinematography than I am. Majority of them probably already tried the in-camera on stage, so aren't much of a new things on this regard as well. So I was thinking, all right, I will tell my story, how I got there, how I got into the industry, and look on what was happening and what's about to happen in the coming future. So I started working kind of tinkering around computer graphics almost 16 years ago, starting from, probably remember those tools like Macromedia, Flash 4, and alike. Yeah, this was my first attempt to do something from programming point of view. Early in my years, I got into the game development industry. So I was software engineer on the custom engines, working along my peers, delivering the games all over the world. At some point, I got tired of games and I switched to something completely new, which was absolutely new back then. It was industry of virtual reality cave systems. It's a big, giant cloud visualization rooms for enterprise arena, for architects or oil rigs and this type of stuff. This is the first time I witnessed something absolutely I couldn't imagine exist. This is 2005, and it was full-blown virtual reality sim, which completely took my attention, and I kept dedicated to this industry for almost 15 years. I think I can hear myself. Someone mute? Yeah, this kind of vibration.
Can everyone mute yourself that's not in the conversation?
Yeah, let's do it manually. All right, so at some point, once you can think of those VR caves as an avatar, but in a big giant room, not just a flat screen in front of you in IMAX. I thought, all right, that's got to be one day super photorealistic. And all technologies back then were just the proprietary engines, far away from even that day computer graphics technologies, just super proprietary, super simple rendering with some basic bump maps in best case scenario. So I wanted to see it cool. I wanted to see how it what will be my perception of reality when it's so real. So I started tinkering around 3D Max and Maya, coming up with a variety of scripts to render out stereoscopic images with symmetric frustums to build up this environment like a big giant cube, just to see how it's going to look like. I ended up having simple application, just rendering out left and right eyes in a clustered environment. Then I started coming up with a variety of renderings just to see how the animation would look like, kind of. And then it was 2009 when Avatar hit the industry, which was absolutely amazing. And a few years forward, I started my business, my service company, which is Pixel Lab, and running till these days. Completely dedicated myself to this clustered computer engines and what could be done with them. I was prototyping this variety of ideas, again, making again my custom engines, tried to use a variety of open source technologies. But at some point, Epic Games opened up their sources. That was completely a game changer for me and for my crew and my team, my business as well. We spent about 3 years pushing the clustering version of Unreal Engine to the enterprise arena. We got tens of developments. It was pretty nice success until we met Epic Games. And then the fun began. We started working on in-camera workflows, on stages, on LEDs, and all those elements you guys know around. So over the last 4 years, I'm kind of heavily involved in the nDisplay development from one side, working for Epic and spinning off my service business from other hand. So I think I have a little bit of background kind of from all sides, both participating in game development, VR arena, films, and active engineering efforts happening these days. So what I've been witnessing is that besides kind of streaming services popularity and other breakthroughs like LED stage amount of them have been built over the last couple of years because of the COVID and other elements, we're facing even more breakthroughs that are going to happen in the coming years. I wanted to talk about the not only technological, but the way how things put together. Because what I saw over many projects I've been part of is that there is, despite we all using game technology, there is quite a big disconnect between how games are produced and how movie content is produced for LED stages these days. And this disconnect not only on the technical aspects, but on organizational as well. Like if you compare the industries, the pace is very different. Filmmaking is like sprint, you're always pushing hard to win on stage. The game's a marathon that you're running. So, and it creates quite a disruption of bringing and interchanging the specialists from one industry to another industry. We've been trying to hire many people from games to the film industry, and it's quite problematic, especially on top level and seniority, technical artists and other folks. It's so much needed in what we do these days in films. So yeah, at the same time, while pitching all those folks, I was trying to bring an idea that games are evolving much more faster than the film industry. That's my opinion. Just because the how much error tolerance and mistake tolerance acceptable in the games industry, and how much indie and smaller development studios are working on the tech. This is not the case for film, as far as I'm aware. Correct me if I'm wrong on a later discussion. That's why intermixing all those worlds, I think that's what would dramatically can improve the situation, both on stage, both on business practices in terms of pricing, estimating the environments, and so on. What happening is that movie industry is a step ahead that games in terms of kind of intervening those industries. So I think people from movie industry should bring on board all of us from game worlds, because here's what's happening, that either it's Unity or Unreal, right? We was producing assets, those virtual worlds, and there is already attempts to mix both of them on real projects. Kind of, you shoot a movie, you bring this into the title that's going to be released in a year or a couple of years. So saving budgets on reusing and repurposing the assets, this will be kind of a pinnacle of VAD departments and anyone who working on these environments on games. The question how to collide those industries, and I think it's coming to the point, well, you're seeing what's happening, the big studios buying and hiring game developers, and it will happen. The content will be repurposed for many purposes across the seasons and so on and so on. The question how we can facilitate it faster, more efficient. And that's my observation, what I saw, that there is quite a reluctance in terms of hiring vendors from gaming world by movie industry, which shouldn't happen because it's the professionals from different industry. And I really wanted to capitalize on this and encourage everyone to look into this industry. Everyone who able to produce decent game, capable of pulling pretty decent environments for your films, no doubts. We've done this many times. And it all might sound a little bit kind of metaverse. Oh, games and industries, it's a pretty big hype these days. But well, there is no clear definition on metaverse, and I'm not going to this direction. But it's happening on technical side, right? It's happening just these days, the way how Unreal just bringing both workflows for both industries. So the question, who will be first? And the first will be those who, well, will be eager to try this out. Because at some point, I think, these days, nobody's surprised at how just able to copy paste text from Notepad to WordPad to your email and code and go ahead. The same going to happen with content applied across all stack of technologies, either it's just static props, baked lights, or animation, bones, or even meta-humans and technologies alike to kind of super universal. And this brought me to the one of the thoughts that I wanted to ask all of you gentlemen and ladies about, that being there's one leg in engineering from another leg in entrepreneurship world, I see it quite challenging even to myself to keep the attention to all the technologies coming out. I mean, just to follow all of the things that are happening, not talking about applying them right way to another person. Navigating this change from business perspective even more challenging. Yeah. So my key message for today, I think, will be that we have to share more information. I mean, there is absolutely not much technical guidelines and tricks and explanations how to approach those production efforts for people from games. Let's say I've been reading myself a couple of, I have quite a few books, and I got a few more on cinematography just to expand my knowledge of the industry, just to get the same vocabulary and language of variety techniques that DOPs and directors using. And people from games kind of familiar with this domain because, well, they have cinematics, they have cutscenes, surely not to the level of movies. However, what's happening on stage is completely mystery, right? So I think the initiative that Erik is pulling here is just great, and I wish it will be more and more often more technical, more kind of inclined toward every single release and tag. Because over the last 4 years since we started on those workflows, what we had at the very beginning, and you probably saw what we have these days, like Unreal 427, the visual editor, all those tools, bells and rings you can see in real time, which were non-existent 4 years ago. Now they're there. So workflows changed, new tools available, lens calibration tools, and so on and so on. But nobody really knows about them. And I see quite again, another reluctance that people from industry aren't really up to hiring people without experience using those tools. However, from game developers' perspective, it's not a rocket science. I mean, it's a tools. You got to get on stage once, click a couple of buttons, use level snapshots, and well, you're there. But how it's exactly applied by a particular director on set, right? What the dynamics of those changes? This is a big unknown to many. Yeah. So I won't be surprised if someday we will have clear guidelines like books or something that outlining all those workflows to everyone. Because ultimate goal of what we're doing is to bring tools to storytellers. I'm more engineer, entrepreneur, I'm not a storyteller, but seeing how people utilizing all those tools for their stories is just amazing. Yeah, so feel free to ask me whatever questions, gentlemen, ladies, you have. I will be happy to answer them.
So let's do a hand raising system if we have people who have questions, just so it doesn't have a bunch of people talking over each other. I don't see a hand yet, but come on, somebody. I can't imagine this crowd has no questions for this man.
I have a question.
All right, Wally.
Hello. Thank you for telling us a little bit about how you got there. I think there's some parallels here to when some of the tools that sort of made up modern compositing came out. I remember being at a SIGGRAPH where a company called Animal Logic, which at the time became Discrete Logic, was showing something called the Flash, which later on became Flame. And one of the things that was very interesting about that transition, it was that Flame was the first tool that was very integrated. It had 3D compositing, it had lighting, it had color correction, it had warping, it had a lot of tools that had never been seen before. And even the Silicon Graphics engineers that were there were wondering how the heck they were doing it. Because at that time, Gary Tregaskis, who was the inventor of Flame, figured out that he couldn't draw many pixels to the screen using the hardware he had, but he could draw many polygons. So in essence, he started drawing a polygon per pixel. And suddenly he was doing real-time image processing and things like that. And so when Flame came out, there were a group of people, and they include people like Mike Seymour and Peter Webb, one of the first Flame artists in the world, Sheena Dugal, who's a VFX supervisor at Sony that's worked on many things, including What Dreams May Come and a bunch of Spider-Man movies. And what we had that was really interesting is something I kind of see in this group in a way, which is a whole bunch of people that have a really keen interest in moving things forward, are not worried about sharing what they learn because it just creates momentum, right? And at that time, we were maybe 6 Flame artists in the whole world. And we were trying to really share all of these things. How do particles work? And how do these formulas behave? And a lot of us were not very technical. I wasn't. I was terrible at math and whatever, but I had that production background. So I could contribute the production side of the equation, and someone else was contributing this sort of mechanical side, and another person had a lot of experience with the mathematical part of the process, and it became really interesting and really worth sharing. So I don't necessarily have a question for you, but what I do see is a very interesting intersection in the games world. For example, we just used GTA to do a pre-visualization of a complex automotive scene. And it was incredible. We had almost anything we needed there. We could animate the camera, we had physics, and we didn't have to write it from scratch, and we didn't have to animate it from scratch. So it was really interesting. And what I would like to encourage is that as much as you share, it becomes part of this snowball that I think a lot of us could take advantage of in the big picture.
I think in terms of sharing, what I would like to see people sharing is my personal area of interest is the following. I would love to see some really wide set of examples of matching the sets, the physical and virtual set, how they match it. Because I've done a couple of tricks. I think other people applying creative techniques, but it's still kind of tricky every single time. I mean, you're shooting night, you're shooting day, you're shooting rain, it's always a tricky, either it's a sand or snow. So having this kind of recipes will be pretty cool. I will be super happy to see more examples. I mean, it will come along, I hope, in the coming year, maybe 2, of usages of background characters, right? MetaHumans isn't there yet, but at some point we'll have characters on the background, and how they're going to be utilized within the specific shot, how they animate it, how they set, and so on, and so on, and so on. I'm likely to hear more about European cinematography tricks, right? How, let's say, traveling shots are working or not working, right? How the motion blur screwing up the shot or not, how it's been solved. This type of integrated details that kind of brings the value on stage. Yeah.
Our next question is coming from Daniel De La Rosa of Sony. Daniel?
Yeah, I'm just curious if you had seen the kind of pseudo documentary that was put out by the Academy on virtual production a couple weeks back, and if you had any comments or what your thoughts are on that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. This was one of the things I was thinking, all right, what I'm going to tell. And I started looking through all the materials I was able to find in the web, just not to repeat myself if there's something available. I think there's a really, I liked very much the brief history of how we got there. I mean, starting from scenic backdrops, all those front and real projection, all those tricks from 30s and 40s were quite cool to read. And I mean, it brings real understanding to people who on the engineering side that we are next evolutionary of the same technique that used for almost 100 years so far. So I find this specifically a C that came out 20th of October, I think a month ago, is one of the best produced, I mean, 90 minutes you can watch on virtual production, because there is something from prominent leaders of the industry. Sure. Yeah.
And is that the one with Rob Legato in it?
It's one virtual production IU game.
I think I have it. I'm just going to post it in case
Yeah.
anybody. I think
Yeah,
I
it's on
have it.
YouTube. It's got Rob and
Yep.
several other members.
It's in the
Highly
chat if
recommend it.
anybody wants to watch that piece. All righty, do we have another question? I guess I'm going to throw one more question out before we go to the next speaker. And you talked about some really great tools that you're not seeing people use that much. I love the whole level snapshots thing that rolled out in 4.2.7. But please share the tool. Just give us a brief, highlights of things that you think that groups like this should be aware of that might be new or not used that often.
Oh, I think put this way, there's kind of development cycle we're working on, and some elements in early prototyping or experimental phase, but they still make it to release. They aren't getting much exposure because there aren't much either documentation, or we're still trying grounds how they work now. So level snapshots is one of those elements that you definitely want to try around for a variety of versions of your changes, instead of saving the content or copying gazillion of copies of your level and switching them real time. You can just save only specific changes, let's say sun position and rotation, or specific assets that have been spread in the scene as a different set change, and dynamically switch them just from the editor, which is pretty neat and pretty handy. I think another tool that's coming is to address the lens calibration. It's more for XR world, but that's coming. I think it's already in 4.27. It should be there technically. There were a few really cool tools to improve the tracking calibration. Now I see there is kind of huge division. Those people who use it to work with tracking system, they just get it in a snap. I mean, here's your tracker, here's a camera, here's calibration offsets, you're ready to go. And some people don't really want to bother themselves with figuring out what it is, how it works. So there is a tool coming. I don't really know if it's already in 4.27. It should be. I think it's in there for tracking calibration. It makes it much more easier to kick it in. Yeah, we also added, I think, in 4.27 for the camera, there is no new color grading tool set, which is much more simpler to use than post-processing. I think we added, in camera.
You might have just opened the can of worms there, Vitalii, talking color. We got to be careful with this group. We will have 4 hours of conversation.
Yeah, I think, big thing is OSIO profiles, which simplifying the color calibration for cameras. Yeah, while we will be listening to Paul, I will try to look up the link, or I think there will be some public documentation from Epic regarding all the new stuff that were dropped in 4.2.7. This will be worthwhile to share as well.
Well, that would be absolutely amazing. And and maybe we can invite you to our Slack channel so you could publish some of these things or things you think we should be aware of in the announcements channel. We are running out of time with you right now.
Sure.
We also have Paul Devevic up today. So we have 2 superstars today. Extremely excited about this. And we hope you can stay on and give us that data later. But Paul, I'm going to thank you so much again, Vitalii. Really appreciate your time. And thank you for all of your work and how much it has impacted us. So
Thank you very much. Hey, Paul, take it over.